Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Victoria. It's wonderful to see you online today. And as I'm recording this, it is Sunday afternoon, Thanksgiving Sunday afternoon. I've just returned from church where we had a really wonderful Thanksgiving feast and gave thanks for all of the blessings in our lives. And this day, of course, is a day when we think about those things, about all of the blessings. And tomorrow, our official Thanksgiving Day as well. And it's not just about saying, yes, I'm blessed because I have, food and shelter and clothing and because I live in this country and so on. It's about also looking back on our memories, looking back on all of the things that have made us really happy in our lifetime. Never mind the things that made us sad. Let's look at the happiness moments and know how blessed we are to have had so many of them. I was saying this morning to our congregation that even when we go through the worst of times, when we are in sadness and sorrow, when we are grieving, we know that eventually we will merge out of it. And I always say to people when I'm about to do a celebration of life, I know that you're in profound grief right now. I know you think that your life will never be the same. And it quite likely won't be, because you're going to be missing that person that you love so well. But one thing I can promise you is that one day, probably many months from now, you'll find yourself laughing again. You'll find yourself being playful. You'll find yourself living your life again, fully living your life. And what is going to make that happen is the memories right now that you have that are making you sad because you miss them are the memories that are going to make you happy in the future as you look back on them. And so there's so many ways that we can look at our blessings in our lives. And that's but one of them. So as I was thinking about those things, I was thinking about the poet Khalil Gibran, who talked about joy and about sorrow and how they intermingle, how we really can't have one without the other. And I'd like to share with you this beautiful poem that he wrote. And then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unanswered and unmasked. The same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can that be? If not the cup that holds your wine, the very cup that burned in a potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find that it is only that which has given you sorrow, which is that which has given you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again into your heart, and you will see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say that joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, oh no, sorrow is greater. But I say they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your table, remember the other is asleep on your bed. I love that line. Together they come, and when one sits with you at your table, remember the other is asleep upon your bed. That doesn't mean that when we're joyful, that we need to be looking over our shoulders, looking at the metaphorical bed, looking for something terrible to happen, although we probably all know somebody who does, says, well, I'm feeling so happy right now that something terrible is probably about to happen. The sky is falling, the sky is falling. But we know that that's not the truth. That's not a spiritual truth. It's not the way that we look at our lives at all. Dr. Holmes said that one of the things that's really important is for us to look for good in everyone, in every human being, everywhere, everyone we meet. No matter what is going on, look for the good in them. Look for the God in them. And when we do, we find that we are experiencing more joy in our lives. And we're also sharing that joy with others as well. I was in Save on Foods on yesterday, and I decided to have a chai latte and just sit for a few minutes and rest because I'd had a really busy week. And as I was sitting there, I was watching people coming and going. And there was a really extraordinarily beautiful young woman who was at the end of the line. And she was probably about 19 or 20. And there was a young man who came in through the door, and he was severely physically disabled. And I was worried he was going to fall because he looked like he just had virtually no balance. And he went up to the young woman and said hello and gave her a hug. And she just was filled with delight to see him and chatted with him for a little bit. And then he walked off with a big smile on his face. And a few minutes later, he came back, and it was a long line. She was still in line. And he came back and he said, I learned something. And she said, what did you learn? And he put his hands together, in a heart shape. I'm not doing this very well in front of a camera, in a heart shape. And he said, I learned that this means I love you. And she smiled, and then they both held up their hands like this and at the same time said, I love you. And then he said, I have to go. And he went like this. And she went, I don't know how they knew one another, how well they knew one another, but each of them was absolutely radiant with joy. And I thought, it takes so little for us to experience joy, to express joy, but I experienced so much joy watching them. Sometimes we don't take enough time to really look at what's around us, to look at the blessings, to look at the love, to look at the life, to look at all of the wonderful things. And it was a very special moment yesterday. So those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be looking at Thanksgiving. Look around us. Look at what's going on. Look at the beautiful things that are happening, the messages of love that are around us, whether or not we're close to our families in proximity or feel close to them in our hearts. There's love there to be shared. And I'm always suggesting when I have a class that we should be journaling. Journaling about the things that we're grateful for every day. 2, 3 things, whatever they happen to be, write them down because we forget. We remember the really big things, but we don't remember the little things every day that make life worth living, that bring us such great joy. The friend who calls unexpectedly, the person who takes you out for lunch or pays for lunch when you think you were going to pay for it. Just the unexpected things that happen along the way that are such a joy. And so we need to record those. And I've shared before that I have a remembrance box, and it's shaped like a heart. It's quite big, and it's padded with a floral pattern and shaped like a heart. And what I do is I record my bits of gratitude on it every day on little sticky notes, put them inside the box. And then I pull it out on New Year's Day and take out all of the little notes and read them. And I'm reminded of how blessed I am and all of the wonderful things that happen to me throughout the year. But I was thinking today that, maybe I should be doing that on Thanksgiving Day. Maybe that's something for tomorrow, because that's really what it's about. And I thought, yeah, that's what I'm going to do, because as I look at those things and I remember the people who said things or did things for me, it just brings me great joy. And it brings me great joy in remembering them as well and how dear they are to me in my life. So we keep a gratitude journal and we remember to pay it forward. A few times I've been standing in line to get tea or coffee, and someone behind me will say, may I buy your coffee today, or may I buy your tea today? And at first it was kind of a shock, and then I would say, well, thank you, that would be lovely. And then I would make a commitment that I would do that the next time that I was in a line, because it makes the world a happier place. I think it was a few years ago that this started with a drive-through at, I think it was Tim Hortons. And someone said that they went through until 4 p.m. before anybody had to pay for his or her own coffee, because everybody who went through said they were paying it forward from the car ahead of them. What a beautiful world it is when we do things like that. What a beautiful gesture it is when we do that. It's just a reminder, an absolute reminder of the things that are good for us in our lives, the things that make us happy, and the things that bring happiness to other people. And I always suggest that we keep a list of the 10 things that we're absolutely most grateful for in our lives. Whatever those 10 things are, keep them in our purses, in our wallets. And from time to time, if we're feeling a bit down, pull them out and have a look at the list and read it and count your blessings. You know, it's such an enormous thing. And be appreciative and show your appreciation. You know, the day yesterday when I saw these two young people expressing their love to one another under rather unusual circumstances, I realized that when I went through the checkout that day for my own chai latte, the young woman who was serving me was so incredible. She was really fast and and smiling, and it just made me feel really good. And she's new, and the fellow who was there in the past few months took forever. Sometimes he would take my order and then would go and wash dishes for a couple of minutes, and then would get to making whatever it was I'd ordered. And I always figured, well, that was time for me to practice the P word, patience. What can I think about? What can I do in these circumstances so I'm not going to get all upset because he's moving so slowly? Anyway, that day, as the young woman, as I paid for my tea, I said to the young woman, you're really amazing. And she said, thank you. And I said, you are so efficient, you're fast, you're clear about everything, and you just work so well. And she said, thank you, that's really good to hear. And I said, well, I have to tell you, you're a huge improvement over the person who used to be here doing the same job. And she was just smiling from ear to ear. And I was smiling. I was just so happy, to have had such good service in a place which hadn't had very good service for a long time. So share your appreciation. Thank somebody for what they do. Thank the person who sweeps away the leaves on your walk. Somebody who is mowing the grass, someone who's snipping weeds out of the garden, whatever it happens to be. Somebody who just does what seems to be the simplest of pleasures or the simplest of service to you. Say thank you. In our teaching, we say thank you is the greatest prayer of all, which is the topic of my talk today, the greatest prayer of all. Thank you. And the reason that we say it's the greatest prayer of all is because when somebody gives us a gift or gives us something, we say thank you. It's just automatic. But in our teaching, what we know is before we receive the physical gift in our hands, we say thank you. If I want, if I want something new in my life, if I want a concert ticket, let me take something that's fairly small. If I want a concert ticket, if I just say, thank you, God, thank you for my concert ticket, then it's on its way to being manifest. I'm not saying, I hope I'll get it tomorrow. Tomorrow may never come. Or someday, and I'm fond of saying someday is not a day of the week. We say thank you for it now and let it go. Because once we are expressing our gratitude without any doubt that it's coming to us, it comes to us. And it's very, very powerful. And if you're not already doing it, try it. And then don't say, oh, it hasn't shown up yet. Because as soon as we do that, we're putting the emphasis on lack rather than on the abundance in our lives. So I'm not saying that it's necessarily easy. It takes practice. And then it becomes easier. And, go out in nature. Hug a tree. I'm serious, hug a tree. The energy that comes from trees in a forest is absolutely phenomenal and can be breathtakingly beautiful. And if you really need to be uplifted, if you're having a day that isn't very, very good or what you might call good, go for a walk in the forest, or else go and sit on the beach and just watch the tide come in watch the ripples on the waves, watch the waves themselves, depending upon what day it is, what kind of day it is. And notice how different you feel just from being out there in nature. And certainly we don't have any excuse this year because we're having such a glorious autumn. Beautiful weather, and the trees are starting to turn. It's absolutely an extraordinary time, and something in itself for us to be grateful for. And, express our appreciation in letters as well as just saying thank you to someone. Several weeks ago, one morning when I got up, I was doing my morning prayers, and I sat down at my desk for a few minutes afterward, and I thought, I just need to be in touch with my family, but I didn't want to phone them. I didn't want to Zoom, that kind of thing, or text. That kind of thing is so easy to do. I wanted them to have something in their hands that told them that I loved them. And so I dashed off a quick note to everybody in my family, just saying, I'm thinking about you today. You're in my heart, and I love you, and I will always love you. And I sent them off. Sent them to my daughters, my son-in-law, my grandchildren, and the response was beautiful. I forgot about it. The mail isn't exactly swift these days. And two of my daughters right now are living in Banff, from one of my sons-in-law, and my daughter and son-in-law sent me a message. It was probably about 7 or 8 days later, and said, "Oh, we just got your card. That is so sweet. We love you too." And my granddaughter in Toronto sent me a text saying, "That made my day. Thank you so much. I love you so much." How often do you get something in the post these days other than a bill? How often do you get a little note from somebody that just says, "I love you"? It really means so much, and it's that what goes around comes around kind of thing. Think about it. Who is it that you need to speak to? Who is it you need to send that message to today? And then do it. Just do it. Yes, stamps have gone way up in price, but there's no price that can be put upon I love you. And it is something that will be forever treasured. I remember when my grandmother passed away, and I was responsible for clearing out all of her things, and she and I had been very close. From the time I was a little girl, before I could ever write, I used to paint her wiggly lines on paper in different colors, and those little lines were supposed to represent writing. And I signed my name awkwardly. And through the years, I always wrote to her, and I used to write her poems. Anyway, when I was clearing out her things, I came across this great big box. It was filled with cards from all kinds of people. She had kept, I think, every card that anyone ever sent her, and letters and so on. And I sat on the floor in the attic going through them. And I thought, oh, there are none of mine here. I wonder why she didn't save any of mine, because we loved one another so much. And then I went on to open another box, and everything I had ever sent her was in the other box. All of mine were separate from the others. And I sat and I cried. I loved her so much. And in the end, the thing that mattered the most were those cards and letters that she kept that represented her heart. I remember, and her Bible was there, and I opened it up, and I never thought of her as being a particularly religious woman. And on the front page of her Bible were written the words, "How great thou art." I thought, wow, imagine the faith that when you're given a Bible or you buy a Bible, that you inscribe it that way. It says so much more than preaching could. Those are the little things that end up being the really big things in the end. And thank everyone who does any kind of service for you at all. Whatever it happens, if somebody holds a door, genuinely thank them. It doesn't happen all that often anymore, but when it does, be really grateful. And be sure to pass that along to someone else as well. And carry your own prayer with you. A prayer that really touches your heart It could be the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. It could be any prayer that you've learned along the way or that you've read along the way. Carry it with you, and when you need it, pull it out and read it, and just feel the presence. Feel the presence within. It's in those moments that prayer is so effective. And at night, before going to sleep, when you're lying there in bed, put a smile on your face and say, thank you. Thank you, God. The greatest prayer of all, thank you for life. Thank you for all of the blessings this day. And then name some of them. Name some of the things for which you're grateful that day. And just say, just release myself to you. And I wake up in the morning energized and refreshed, no matter how you're feeling at that moment. And just find out what it's like to wake up the next morning with a smile on your face and with a prayer in your heart. I think every Thanksgiving there's a story that I share, and I'm sure that I shared it last year, and I'm doing it again this year because to me it represents the things that are really important in our lives and how we look at them. It's a story of a couple who had a little boy who was 4 years old. He had a 6-year-old sister who was absolutely fine, but this little boy had had 3 heart surgeries. He had brain damage at birth. He hadn't walked. He hadn't talked. He didn't recognize anything. Doctors weren't certain that he even understood anything at all. And they sat down with his parents after his 3rd surgery, and they said, look, he has an IQ of about 56. He will never be able to learn. He'll never be able to play like other children. He'll never be able to respond in the way that they do. Really, for the sake of your family, you should place him in an institution. And they looked at one another, and they decided that they would put their son in a wagon that they had, and they would take him outside for a while. It was summertime. And they were sitting there trying to figure out what they should do, and they noticed their little boy had turned his face upward to the sun. And the sun was shining down upon him, and he smiled. And there was a breeze going through his hair, and he touched his hair. And they looked at one another, and they knew that there was an awareness of some kind within him, and there was no way he was going into an institution. 2 years later, when he was 6, he was walking and running and playing and chasing his sister and chasing the cat and speaking perfectly normally and reading at a grade 1 level. And his parents said, before that time, before the day they made that decision to bring their son home, they were always looking at a new car or upgrading their house or buying something, taking a trip somewhere, whatever. And now all that matters to them are the simple things. Sunshine on their faces and a breeze in their hair, because it saved their son and it saved them. And they felt the presence of God in those things. And they said nothing else ever really mattered to them after that. Think about it. Think what's important, what's really, really important in our lives. Because if we're the kinds of people who always want more, more playthings, more toys, more, bigger house, a fancier car, whatever, we will never be satisfied. We'll always be wanting more. When we accept the amazing gifts that we already have in our lives, there's peace and contentment there. And that's what's so important. Those are the things for which we can be truly, truly grateful. So I invite you now to close your eyes for a moment. I'm just going to read a Thanksgiving prayer to you, and I'd like you to just take it right in. Gratitude is like a flashlight. You can go out into your yard at night and turn it on and can suddenly see what's there. It was always there, but you couldn't see it in the dark. Gratitude is saying thank you. Thank you for the greatest gift of all. And so in this Thanksgiving prayer, please take in these words. God of all blessings, source of all life, giver of all grace, we thank you for the gift of life, for breath that sustains life, for the food of this earth that nurtures life, for the love of family and friends, without which there would be no life. We thank you for the mystery of creation, for the beauty that the eye can see, for the joy that the ear may hear, for the unknown that we cannot behold, filling the universe with wonder, for the expanse of space that draws us beyond the definitions of ourselves. We thank you for setting us in this community, for families who nurture our becoming, for friends who love us by choice, for companions at work who share our burdens and daily tasks, for strangers who welcome us into their midst, for people from other lands who call us to grow in understanding, for children who lighten our moments with delight, for the unborn who offer us hope for the future. We thank you for this day. We thank you for life. One more day to love, for opportunity, and for more days to work for justice and peace, for neighbors, for one more person to love, and to be loved by one more person, for your grace, and for the conscious experience of your presence. For these and all blessings, thank you, thank you, thank you, beloved God. And so it is. And so today I wish you the happiest of Thanksgivings. I hope you have a beautiful Thanksgiving Monday. And I hope the rest of your weekend goes very well for you as well. And that you're with beloved friends and sharing blessings and making new memories today. If you'd ever like to drop in to see us in person, we're at 380 Cook Street in the Cook Street Village in Victoria. We're actually in the Cook Street Village Activity Center. And we do put a sign out on Sunday morning, but you could be confused because there's also a wellness center there. And if you read that sign, you might think you have to keep on going, but in fact, you're in the right place. And if this service has begun, then you'll need to go in the side door. But if we haven't started yet, then the front door is open. We meet at 10:30 in our lounge for meditation, and our main service is in the auditorium at 11 a.m. We would love to welcome you there. Have a blessed week, and may there be sunshine and warm breezes in your lives all the way. And so it is. Bye for now.